Right, so we pretty much covered the back end of the car. Well, there's a few little bits and pieces to the front of the seals which I've got to deal with, but it's best if I'm doing with that when the front end's up in the air. So I thought I'd tackle a well-known rusty area for a Corsa. That's the front cross member. Now I've lifted this thing up in the air and I've probably got about half a kilo of rust just appeared on the front drive. So I'm going to just quickly show you what parts I'm going to be taking off and see if we can go from there. All right, here we go. Okay, so we've got it up in the air. Safety first, we've got it on a jack. It's on solid, firm ground. There's a spare wheel is actually underneath, so let's give it some added clearance should it come down. Wheels off. We're going to be taking out that wheel arch liner. I don't know if you can see the state of all of this lot in here. Now I've actually got replacement front end suspension set up, cross member, anti-roll bar and knuckle, because this one's actually got one of these has got a broken stud in it. So I'm going to replace all of those, so that's going to be good fun. But to help do things, we're going to have to take the bumper off. So that's a set of 8mm bolts all the way along the front here. I'm going to take the headlights out and then tackle this in here. So I'm going to show you now what it's like actually underneath. 1 second. So we've got one dirty great big hole here. That's right at the end, and I think I can actually deal with that without replacing that cross member, but I need to have a good close look at it. And then lots of rusty bits all the way along. So off with the suspension, that'll facilitate the repair at this end. Both sides, drop it all down, have a look at the brakes, deal with all of that. The other thing that I've got here, this thing's that rusty, even the sump pan's taken a bit of a battering. So I might have to have a look at trying to do something with that. And I've got a nice little oil leak which has been sealed up with some bathroom sealer, so I'm going to have to try and deal with that one as well. So front end looks like it's going to be a good few weeks work, and it starts here. So we've got the front bumper off and front cross member, and it's just left me so I can actually get into what's left of this front panel, this cross member. And I've got to say, I'm really shocked. Now I am a sort of mend and make do sort of chap, and generally if it was just a small hole or the end of the assembly, I would have perhaps patched it up. But for a cost of £37 on the internet, on eBay, I can get a replacement panel in the next couple of days, and that will make for a much tidier and safer job. So I'm going to do that, because this panel is actually made up of about 3 or 4 different pieces. It's quite a lot of work to actually try and fabricate it myself. And while I've got plenty of time and limited funds, I think £37 is the best spent money. Now I'm sitting here in front of the car. I've just done the little talk about the front cross member. The other thing is, if we have a look at the front panel itself, it's quite a rusty bit of kit too, and it won't be long before that's rotted out. So while I'm waiting for those panels to arrive, what I'm going to do is I'm going to rip the headlights out, remove or free up the radiator, which has got to be done anyway, and I'm going to start to de-rust some of this front panel, the landing panel, so we can get some paint on it and make it half decent, so you get a bit more life out of it. Have a look at this. As you can see, it's a bit tired. Again, I think it's the question that the car's spent most of its life in the water, so we're going to sort that. So today we're going to start stripping down the front end. Day free from welding and grinding for me, because I've got issues with arthritis in my hands. So I can't be gripping the grinder or whatever it is today too hard. So I'm going to start pulling things apart. I'm going to show you what we're going to be taking off. So all of this is coming off today, all of these, and we're going to disassemble the brake assembly and hub assembly, both sides. We're going to strip off all of that anti-roll bar, and take out the radiator and the headlights and all the bits on the front panel assembly. So basically I'm going to be just left with all the metalwork at the front end here. Let's go. Okay, so I've got a seized bolt, which is this one right at the back here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my trusty torch to warm it up. I'm going to get this to a nice good heat using the torch. Now making sure obviously there's nothing else around here that's like to be burning, like wiring loom or stuff like that. Get this nut nice and hot. What that'll do is it'll actually free up the rust on it. Hopefully give us the opportunity to take it down without snapping the bolt or ripping our knuckles off. It'll take quite a while with a blowtorch like this because it's not as hot as an oxyacetylene torch, but it'll do the job just as well, although it'll take a little bit longer to do it. So you notice we're heating the nut. I'm not actually heating the bolt itself. What I don't want to be doing is stretching and shearing the bolt, but I need the nut to expand slightly, and that will break the seal or the rust that's on it. So let's try that now. Let's just round it off. So we have to look at something else to do with that one now. So this bolt now is actually just spinning. I have managed to free it up, but it only went so far and then decided it was going to shear from its mounting. So the best way I'm going to deal with that is to actually MIG it back to the original panel and then take it out from there. The other two have actually come out with a little bit of persuasion, so that's great news. I've got the other side to do now. Okay, to get to these other bolts, you'll see that these are quite near to some pipe work. Obviously the end of the radiator is a bit of an issue. In reality I ought to be removing that radiator, but what I'm going to do is actually release it and try and see if we can work with it just moved out of the way. So let's have a tackle at that. I can see that it's held in at the top here by some 10mm bolts, and there's another one there, just where my finger is. Just turn it around that way so you can see. There you go. And then the top should actually come out and the bottom should actually lift out of these securing post holes here. Let's see what we can do with that. So I've removed the brackets which were held on with a 10mm bolt from the top of the landing panel to the top of the radiator. What you'll notice is there's some very specific rubber mounts on the radiator. You do not want to lose those, and obviously you don't want to lose the brackets. If I was just fitting and stripping, I'd be inclined to put the nut or the bolt back in here into the captive nut, but as it happens I'm going to be painting the whole lot, so I've removed it. If we get down to the underside, when we lift the radiator up, you'll see here there's a small leg on the bottom of the radiator. This sits in one of these rubber mountings that actually sits in that hole in there. So when you remove this, you don't forget to take the rubber bung out, otherwise your radiator is going to be rattling around. So we've now got some movement on the radiator. The next issue for me is to deal with all this pipe work that's down the back here, because this is going to have to come out, and it's quite tight and it runs down the back of that beam down there, which I can't show you because it's quite tight back there, but that's my next, is to have a little bit of a tackle with that. So today I'm waiting for the panels to arrive and some other little bits and pieces so we can sort out the chassis. What I've done is we've continued taking off the headlights and the bits and pieces for the front panel, and I've given it a little coat of grey paint, and after giving it a bit of a de-rust. Have a look at what we've got. So having it all stripped out made it very easy to get it all nice and clean, using a sander and a wire wheel. I basically roughed it up, got rid of all of the rust, given it a coat of etch, and then I've given it a couple of coats of high grade grey primer filler so I can flat it all down and get all the scratch marks out of it. The top panel is the bit that's got to look quite nice, because when you lift up the bonnet, that's the bit you're going to see. The bits down here, really I've just given them a coat of paint so they're actually protected. Obviously I've got to deal with where the new panel arrives, where that comes to be done. But this is a job at the top here which had to be done, if not sooner or later, at some point, so I've given it the opportunity to do that today. Give me a break from lying on my back. One of the other things that I have done is the bumper mounting assemblies were all rusty, and just, you know, because a little bit of OCD, I've given them a machine and then given them a nice coat of gloss black paint. Okay, so we've got all the suspension down, and what we can see is this is all, because of the rot, is substantially weakened. So my plan is to reinforce this. I'm not going to cut this out because it's offering some structural strength, but I'm going to reinforce that. And what I've been doing, actually make some plates. I'm going to make a glove to go over the top of this, not out of cardboard obviously, using this for the templates, but I'm going to make this out of sheet steel and just tack it all together and put it all into place. And then what I'm going to try and do is make a sleeve which will go inside of here and lap this section here. I'm then going to deal with this bit here, which I'll probably actually take that bit out, and then I'm going to reinforce this piece along here as well, along the bottom, and obviously the same on the other side, which I'll try and show you a little bit later. So I'm going to weld the glove together, so to speak, and that will be drilled and spot welded into the existing structure where it's half reasonable, and obviously run weld to make it strong. So that'll offer some increased protection on there, I would hope. Obviously, one thing I would need to make sure I do is just open this gap up slightly, because once we put the sleeve inside, it's going to be incredibly difficult to get that control arm in there unless this has been opened up slightly. You know, because this is going to close the gap if we've got two sheets of steel coming inside here. So I'm going to open this gap up slightly, just to allow a little bit of room in there. So here you can see we've started to make up the templates to give you a bit of an idea what we're trying to achieve here. And then we can take those this frame apart once it's been assembled, cut the panels, just tack them back together and then put them back in, and we know that it's all aligned. Take it back down, seam weld it all up so it gives it rigidity, offer it back in, spot weld and drill it into place. And that's the finished template actually in the hole. Okay, so what we can do now is we can take these plates to the bench and cut the plates. Now I do know that this is very, very tight. As I said, we're going to have to open this aperture up just a little bit and make these just a little bit wider to accommodate that. Now, that's easy enough to accommodate. So but at least we know what sort of panel shapes we're now looking for to be able to rebuild the end of this chassis member. Okay, so we've now cut the bits and I've literally just tacked them together, and if I offer this up to the control arm actually slides inside that. I've now just got to get this to fit to the end of the chassis member. Let's have a look at that. So the panel's up, and we've welded round it. I would like to make sure it's a little bit, check those welds over tomorrow and clean them all up. But it's in, and it's extremely solid. It sounds solid, which is nice. So bear in mind, this is just the front half. I've got the back half to do, which is on the other side. So that will give you the return back to the sill. The back plate of this, the back plate of this. I make these 3 thicknesses thick, and I'll be able to drill through and make sure that's got a little bit of extra rigidity. This panel on the back edge is going to be going up the turret here to some point, and there's a bracket also, the strengthening bracket that runs to the bulkhead from this little piece, which is actually missing. It's rotted away, so I've got some extra thick steel to do that with. And then the final bit will be, as far as I can see, this jacking point on this side is completely shot, so I'll be dealing with something at that. So that's it for tonight. With the magic of video, you'll see me again in the morning.